Today I want to show you one key principle you can use with black when white starts the game 1d4. You can build an entire repertoire around this principle and you can destroy white very quickly. We're of course talking about the English rat. Let's take a look. So today we're doing a bit of a deeper dive into one of the principles we looked at in our last video, and the idea is that when white plays d4 in the opening, we can aim to always respond with this pair of moves d6 and e5, going for an early queen exchange. And I'm going to show you a couple of thematic positional ideas you can use in those queenless middle games to completely dominate your opponent. So after d4, we immediately play d6 with the intention to follow it with d5. Now we can build an entire repertoire around this idea, including against the London system, but today we're going to look at it through the lens of the most classical approach from white, which is the kind of Queen's Gambit setup. We are going to play e5 immediately, and we are now in the English rat position, and who can resist exchanging from the white side and going for the queenless middle game? So after takes, and the queens come off the board, white claims that because they have stopped us from castling, white has the advantage and they can try to push for an early initiative. Now, the key principle I want you to understand here is that because the queens are off the board, it's going to be very difficult for either side to launch a quick attack. So even though, yes, our king is uncastled and stuck in the middle of the board, without their queen, it's going to be very difficult for white to actually do anything about it. And another point based on this is that now that we are starting to transition towards the end game, where pieces and big pieces are getting traded off, it's actually going to be a benefit for us in many cases that our king is centralized, ready to be used as an attacking piece in the endgame. So I want you to think of our long-term strategy in this type of position as good minor pieces for black versus bad minor pieces for white. Specifically, we're going to look at the ways we can optimize our four minor pieces, our bishops and knights, whilst also trying to minimize the effects of white's minor pieces, their bishops and knights, and that understanding is what's going to give us a big advantage in these queenless middle games. So we're going to start our analysis by looking at white's four minor pieces, their bishops and knights, and how we can try to neutralize as best as possible all of these four minor pieces. So typical follow-up might be knight c3 from white, and this is our first point. With this knight, we are going to play c6 and dominate that knight. We're going to stop it entering our half of the board. We're going to stop its forward moves. Later, we can expect white to play knight c6, and we're going to be doing the exact same type of idea on the king side. We're going to play f6 and again dominate that knight, stop its forward jumps. Now, a central pawn move we can probably expect white to make at some point is e4, in which case their dark square bishop will become their good bishop on the e3 square, and we can try to minimize the effectiveness of that piece via a maneuver of knight b to d7 followed by bishop to c5, trading off our bad bishop with white's good bishop. Notice how after we move our kingside pawns to dark squares, our f8 bishop might become our bad bishop. Now finally, in terms of white's light square bishop, which is going to be their bad bishop anyway, you can imagine they're going to have pawns on light squares in the centre. We can just leave that bishop on the board and leave it as a bad bishop. So for example here, white has played knight c3. How do we dominate that knight? We play the move c6, taking away that knight's forward squares. Now, this isn't just a game about minimizing the effectiveness of white pieces, it's also about maximizing the effectiveness of black's pieces. So let's take a look where the black minor pieces might want to go. First of all, our good bishop is going to be optimized on the e6 square. Eventually, it will be inside this kind of pseudo pyramid type structure, very similar to what you might see in a London system, for example. Our queenside knight and our bad bishop might work together to play knight b to d7 followed by bishop to c5 in an attempt to exchange our bad bishop with white's good bishop. Our kingside knight is going to make a more unusual maneuver where it first comes to h6 and back to f7, controlling some key infiltration squares that white might want to use in the future. And if I just clear the paint off the board for a moment, you can imagine that once this knight gets to f7, it is controlling these two key infiltration squares. And if you pair that with this good bishop coming to e6, where it controls these key infiltration squares, these two pieces together work really well to stop any doubling of the rooks that white attempt to do on the open d file later in the game. Let's try and take a look at how that all comes into play in a practical game. So knight f3 is very typical, and again, how do we dominate the knights? We can play f6, taking away that knight's forward squares. e4, we can put our bishop on its best square. Notice that because we've played f6 first, that knight cannot come forward to harass our good bishop. It is very secure on that square. Typical continuation, bishop e3. White tries to do the same thing. They put their good bishop on its best square. And one of our ideas to follow up with is knight d7 with the intention of playing bishop c5, trading off our bad bishop for white's good bishop. Now, I want you to notice a subtlety about this opening and why it's so effective for black is that white does not have the option of doing the same thing. They do not have the option of playing bishop c4 to trade off their bad bishop for our good bishop because they've already taken up that square with the early move pawn to c4. Little subtlety, but this having a good bishop for us versus a bad bishop for them later in the game could become a real problem for white, and practically it's very difficult for them. Now, in practice, white loves to castle queenside because they get their king safe and it comes with this kind of x-ray against our king. Our bishop trade that we plan to do is on hold for the moment because our knight is pinned. But one of the other benefits of playing c6 earlier in the game is it gives our king a very natural square to tuck away on and keep safe for the rest of the game. So we can play that now. King c7, bishop e2 is very typical, and we're now in a position to go for that bishop trade. There is one small tactical nuance you need to be aware of here. If we play bishop c5 straight away, white has the exchange sacrifice with rook takes d7, removing the defender of the bishop and giving up their rook for two minor pieces. That's why it's very important normally to insert this move b6 first. This is one of those small tactical nuances you have to be aware in aid of long-term strategic goals. Most common move here is rook d2, and white again has this idea to double up on that open d file. It looks very natural, very tempting. But once again, one of these maneuvers that we talked about earlier is going to naturally cover all of those infiltration squares that white might want to use. So as soon as I see that rook lift starting, I try to make that maneuver with my kingside knight, making sure I'm covering all those squares. So typically go knight h6. They like to insert h3 first, just stopping this other possible knight infiltration. Then we can come back to f7 anyway, and after they double the rooks, what they probably realise only now is that they have no way of penetrating our position. We are covering all of those penetration squares. Now we're in a great position to just carry on with our long-term strategic plan. We can play bishop c5, trade off our bad bishop for white's good bishop, and notice that exchange sacrifice that we talked about before no longer works because we're already giving this secondary defense to our bishop. The game might carry on, bishop takes, knight takes, and we can take stock from this position. White has two dominated knights, dominated by our pawns on f6 and c6, so bad knights. Black has two knights which will find good play on the queen side. For example, this knight typically later in the game will come here towards the queen side. This knight, which is already on a good square, is normally supported later by the move a5, which would stop it getting kicked with b5. Sorry, with b4. Now, if they decide to kick us sooner than that, we always have a nice retreat square on b7. So notice this theme in this opening that little pawn moves we're making for one purpose early in the game are actually very useful for us for other purposes later in the game as well. So it's a very kind of harmonious setup that we get here. Notice also in terms of the bishops, white has a bad bishop because they have these central pawns on light squares, a typical kind of Maroczy structure, this bad Maroczy bishop, whereas we have a very good bishop here. We have our pawns on dark squares and this bishop is on light squares. Also notice the kings. White's king is still on the 8th rank. Our king is already more centralised and more ready for the possible endgame that will be coming very soon. And one little thing I mentioned before, let's just remove the paint for a moment. I mentioned that white has this kind of Maroczy structure. Now, a very typical Maroczy bind from the white side, their advantage comes from the fact that they have a space advantage and black is very cramped and black is looking to trade pieces. Well, one thing here, black has already been able to play the move e5, which they don't always get to do against the Maroczy bind, and we've already traded one pair of minor pieces and we've traded the queens, and black just doesn't have a space disadvantage here. Black is not feeling cramped. And also, one thing that's very typical for black to aim for against the Maroczy bind is an endgame with a good knight versus a bad bishop. For example, let's imagine a situation where we trade off white's knights for, let's say, our bishop and one of our knights, and we're left with a situation of a good knight here versus a bad bishop for white. and these good knight versus bad bishop endgames may sometimes be objectively equal according to the computer, but in practice it is much easier for a human to play with the good knight, and practically you find yourself winning a lot more games. Let's just look at one more move from both sides. Maybe white plays knight to e1, looking to come in here to challenge our good knight. We always have the option of a5, securing that good knight against a potential b4 push. And we can sum up the position here as black has a small objective edge. So this is not a trick opening. This is a very good, solid opening for black based on good principles. And black has that small objective edge, but practically black is winning a very high percentage of games. One really interesting thing I noticed about this exact position after the queens have been traded off. Objectively, this is minus 0.1. Basically even, very small pull for black because of all the things we've talked about. However, at the 1000 level, white is winning 53% of games versus black's 41%. And at that level, what matters is that black has lost castling rights and black does not know how to play the upcoming queenless middle game positions. They don't know about dominating white's pieces. They don't know about maximising their own. And if you play this type of middle game without understanding that, it's going to go very badly for you. Now, let's take a look at what happens when I move up towards the 1600 level, for example. Suddenly, it's 47% for white versus 47% for black. Now, let's go up one more level, all the way up to the, say, 2200 level on the lead chess database. It's now 38% for white and 52% for black. And that just goes to show, if you understand these types of middle games, you can completely dominate players up to that 2200 level. That is how much easier this is to play for black and to get a practical advantage, as long as you understand those positional ideas and those patterns that we talked about earlier in the video. Now, I won't go into the details in this video, but as I mentioned before, you can build an entire repertoire around this. There are good resources online for that. For example, against the London system, white typically enjoys this good London bishop, which is now stunted by our pawn on d6, and they also typically have ideas of knight f3 into e5, which is also stunted by this pawn on d6. Ask any London system player and they will tell you that King's Indian setups are very annoying to play against when you play the London system. Now, it's also possible to use all of these ideas against e4 openings. So for example, e4, d6, d4 is the most common. One nuance here is that you insert knight f6 first, attacking this pawn on e4. They typically reply with knight c3. And we can go for exactly the same idea. e5, pawns exchange in the middle, queens come off the board, and all the same themes apply, where white thinks they have a big edge here and they push too hard. We can look to dominate the knights. We can look to trade off our bad bishop for their good bishop. A couple of small differences from here that you can study for yourself is that white finds it easier to play bishop c4, trying to trade off their bad bishop for our good bishop. There are ways we can deal with that though. And also there might be some different type of maneuvering for our kingside knight because we don't have the option to play the move f6 immediately. But fundamentally, a lot of the same underlying principles are at play in this opening. So I've been playing this opening now as my own main weapon of choice against d4 for a long time, and not only is it brutally effective, but I can also guarantee it's going to improve your positional play and understanding of good squares for your minor pieces, because this opening is all about minimising the effectiveness of white's minor pieces and maximising the effectiveness of black's. It's going to make you a much better positional player. Now, if you like this type of opening and you've tried it for yourself, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. How have you got on in this opening? Are you a lower rated player that has struggled in these types of queenless middle games because you haven't known where to put your pieces? Or are you a stronger player that has used this on a regular basis and found it very effective? Thanks for watching. See you next time.